Even before I started researching this subject, I knew that chemtrails were real just by looking at them. Seeing completely blue skies turn into milky, misty, otherworldly looking alien skies, it just gets so ugly, and you could see the hazy particles in the atmosphere all day. Furthermore, just take a quick look at the infamous NASA document that was leaked in 2001. It goes over aerosol warfare. So check this out. This was written by Dennis M. Bushnell, Chief Scientist at NASA Langley Research Center. Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare, circa 2025. The future is now. There are many things in the pages of this document. I just want to briefly show you page 43, Microdust Weaponry. A mechanical analog to biomicron-sized mechanized dust which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. Dust mechanically bores into lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. And here on the bottom, a wholly new class of weaponry which is legal.
I was a weather observer in the U.S. Air Force, and not too long ago a person handed me a video, and it was called Chemtrails over Marin. Well, I had no idea what a chemtrail was. I did know where Marin was because I was going in and out of Marin County a lot in those days. Marin, Sonoma Lake, Napa. I worked in the North Bay a long time. And when I looked at the video, well, they said, because you were a weatherman, can you give me some advice on what you think these aircraft trails are? Well, it didn't take me very long into there to go, my God, I have not been paying attention. Like so many people, I have not been paying attention. It's obvious they're spraying, but what are they spraying? And how high are they flying? And what is it? You know, I found out it was about 40,000 feet. I took flights across the country, went to New York, went to Chicago. But anyway, I'm seeing this layer at 35 and 40,000 feet and going, how is that possible? In order for a particulate to stay in the sky that long, it has to be nano-size. It has to be really small. I realized that it was a weather modification program, and the biologist in me went, wait a minute. If you start modifying the weather, you're changing your precipitation areas, you're changing the times, you're going to be affecting every species that now is using that water. And if you take the water from one place, somebody else isn't going to get it. Okay? So what we're ending up seeing now is we've got floods right next to droughts. It's a serious situation. You can change your ground microbes, you can change the plants, the timing of the plants and the animals. You can change the whole thing. And I started looking at all the dead trees. I thought maybe it was just sun and high UV. Well, that was part of it. But also, the tests started coming back where we've got literally tons of aluminum. The aluminum that we were finding, I started testing lichens because they only get their stuff from the air. And the lichens basically, the test in Calistoga came out 40,000 micrograms per milliliter, which is huge. There should be zero. And the same thing happened for Middletown.
Ganlish, and I worked for 30 years in the aerospace and defense industry as an illustrator, conceptual artist, and a designer. A lot of the projects that I worked on required that I had to be able to cross different fields of endeavor from material science to engineering to physics. So naturally, when these things started happening in the sky, and many of the defense contractors and aerospace companies that I work for design and build aircraft like Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Rockwell, I began to become curious about what was going on. I was skeptical at first. I honestly didn't believe there was anything to the idea of chemtrails. Then around 2001, there was a headline in the newspaper. Now, this headline came 2 days after a sequence of heavy spraying over the Redding area, and I noticed the trails were persisting for most of the day. And that headline said, area hospitals report dozens of patients claiming respiratory distress. And that's when I began to suspect that there was something going on. So I began using the internet, like probably many of you have, and I began looking for what the materials were that were being used and why. Now, there's an awful lot of technical material behind what you're seeing. For one thing, these particles, these nanoparticles that are being put into the air, not only help to shield the ground from the sun and block and reflect the sunlight, which can change the temperature of the air mass below that, make it cooler, make it come together and compress. But it can also be bombarded with microwave radiation from the ground. And if you match the frequency of these particles in just the right way, these particles will begin to heat up in the air, and that heat is transferred to the surrounding air mass. Now, it only has to be a mild amount of heat. It could be 135 degrees. But if you have countless, trillions of these particles suspended in the air that are all being painted with this signal, they will all heat up at the same time, and they will carry that air mass and all the moisture that's in it to a higher altitude where it will condense and become a powerful low-pressure system. Now, people question whether it's possible to manipulate the weather, to steer the jet stream. You have to remember that when you put a coating over a surface and it cools down the air mass below that, the air comes together, it condenses. When you heat up the air mass, it rises and expands. And so by controlling where and when these events occur, you can actually control the flow of the jet stream. A few years ago, it was discovered that the amount of snow that fell in the Himalayas near Mount Everest would actually control where the jet stream went over the course of the following year. And that's just one location on the planet. But if you have thousands upon thousands of planes spraying this material in different regions around the world, all at the same time, you can just imagine the amount of chaos that this will throw into the weather system for the entire planet. Now, the other side of this, of course, is the toxicology, the toxic effects that these materials have. Now, if this ball right here was a red blood cell, something you can't even see without a microscope, you could line 50 of these particles up next to a single red blood cell. That's how tiny they are. They can be absorbed right through the skin, and of course there's almost no filtration system that you can wear that will prevent these things from being introduced into your body during respiration. It was an Air Force study, United States Air Force.